Over the course of this module, you've had a chance to take a look at some conventional graph or table types. These graphs and tables can be used to solve a number of problems, but sometimes data visualization can also be a tool for making a specific point or trying to exercise some creative license to cram a lot of information into a little place. We're going to look at 8 different data visualizations, for lack of a better word, over the course of this video. And each of these 8 visualizations is related to the same topic of the mobile patent wars, which has been a hot news story since approximately 2008. These patent wars are basically a number of lawsuits that are occurring between companies that are in the mobile technology space, like cell phones and cell phone cameras and touch screens, which are all suing each other in order to try to gain market dominance. So we'll take a look at 8 different visualizations, and we'll always use our tools for approaching a graph or table, that is, quickly reading through the graph or table's headings, labels, and legends, and then mentally summarizing what the graph or table is about and the main point that's being shown. So let's take a look at this first visualization, which is from rajansingh.com. If we take a quick look, we can see that we don't have a heading. I'll tell you that it's about the patent wars because I know that, but a key point here, there's no heading, so it'd be very hard to know what's going on here. We can see that we have a bunch of different circles that have company names in them and arrows connecting them, most likely based on which companies are suing each other. We can see that some of the arrows are unidirectional and some are multi-directional. So if you look at this, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? I would say here, I see so much chaos that the first thing that comes to my mind is complexity. I see that there's a lot of activity occurring, that it's very complex, and that it's multi-directional. I'm also drawn to a couple things that are not explained. One is why Cisco Systems here is in gray. It does say that this is a copyright case, so that may be the issue, but it begs the question of what the difference is between copyright and patents and why this is included on the chart at all. And I also see this logo. This may be the HTC logo, but I'm not really sure. So this graph does a great job of conveying complexity, but it does leave a bunch of lingering questions, so a strength and a weakness. Now if we look at the second visualization, which comes from The Guardian, a news source based in the UK, we see that there is a title here. It says who is suing who in the mobile business, so that makes clear what's going on. There's also a date, which is very useful because we know when this information was current. Ostensibly, sometimes this information changes. And we also see a legend. So this tells us that our blue dotted lines indicate patent license deals or concluded lawsuits, so lawsuits that occurred at one point but are over now, and black lines that indicate the latest lawsuit, so maybe the most recent things that are going on. We do have the same impression, I think, with this one as with the last visualization, that there's a lot of complexity and a lot of multi-directional activity. What's one big question that comes up when you look at this graph, though? Take a moment to look at this graph and think about what you don't know or what jumps out at you. For me, the big thing that jumps out is that each of the companies is highlighted in a color. And I don't know what that color means. It's not clear. I'm drawn to the fact, for example, that NTP and the LG group have the same color. Does that imply some relationship between the two? I'm also drawn to the fact that some of these arrows are interrupted by circles. I'm not sure if that means that there's a relationship there, if this was just lazy diagramming. So again, a lot of good information here, a lot of information contained in one place. Gives a strong overall impression of the complexity of what's happening in the mobile space, but some distracting, lingering questions. Now, if we look at visualization number 3, we see that we have many fewer lingering questions. Here we're given a title, Smartphone Competitor Patent Suits, and this one comes from PCMag.com. We also see that each of the arrows, or most of them, are labeled, actually giving the name of the lawsuit and where it was filed. So we know that we have access now to information that can allow us to refer to the specific lawsuit. So this is a great resource for us, as well as conveying this strong message, again, of the complexity of what's going on and the multi-directionality of what's going on. We're very clear based on the company logos of what these stand for, and we're even given information that implies why we have some light gray arrows here. It says that these patent lawsuits were resolved. We can also see when there are multiple companies, if there are multiple lawsuits going on, for example, between Kodak and Apple, how many there are and where they were filed, and the information of that nature. So very powerful information. The big weak spot with this one that probably jumps out is that it's very busy. It can be a little bit challenging to read. Now, in the opposite direction, we have visualization number 4, which is from Florida IP Blog. This one again crams a lot of information into a small space, but it's very readable. You not only get a sense of the complexity of what's going on, but the directionality. Each company is labeled with a circle here that has the number of U.S. lawsuits in it, and the circle is in proportion, we can see, based on comparing this one with 1 and one with 17, approximately to the size of the number of to the number of lawsuits. So we can see, looking at Motorola, there are a lot of lawsuits, and indeed, a lot of arrows going out and coming in. We can also get a quick snapshot based on the color of the arrows of which company is doing the suing. So you can see in this relationship, for example, between Kyocera and Nokia, that there are lawsuits going in both directions, but most are coming from Nokia. One question, lingering question with this graph, although it's a great visualization, is what these pictures of cell phones have to do with anything. Are these representing a certain company, showing what kinds of technologies the companies in different corners make, or are they just there for decoration? It's not clear. This visualization is a little bit cleaned up. It shows similar information in a similar format. One departure here, though, is that there's a lot of segregation by company type. So while we still have the coloration showing the direction of the lawsuit, so you can see who Nokia is suing by looking at these pink lines, for example, we also see a bunch of light gray lines. And we can see here from our legend that this delineates the difference between companies that are operating and companies that are holding companies. That is, in IP speak, companies that are actually making products versus companies that simply hold patents. And this can show you that there's a lot of activity in both areas. You can also see the directionality of this activity seems to basically be all companies that are not operating are basically suing others, but not being sued themselves. So it gives you a sense of the trend of these non-operating companies being heavily involved in lawsuits in the space. Now, if we look at this visualization, we can see it's, again, showing much of the same information, but it's making a specific point. What's Apple's relationship here? We see a number of companies suing each other, but a lot of lawsuits coming into Apple and going out of Apple. And rather than having simply 1 or 2 arrows, we see a number of small arrows showing kind of the battlegrounds that are occurring and where the lines are being drawn. So a very interesting visualization that kind of focuses on one company coming from Business Week. This 6th visualization here is really interesting. It shows a lot of information. It's basically looking at which companies are suing each other, again, like previous lawsuits, but it colors the arrows by who, whether a company is suing, whether the companies are suing each other, or whether these lawsuits are about licensing. So you can get a sense that most companies are involved in one-directional lawsuits, but that Apple, for example, is involved in a lot of lawsuits that go back and forth. So you can see these trends pretty easily. There's also a lot of information here that's a little bit hard to interpret. Some of the companies use Google's Android platform, and it's hard just based on adding this circle to the company name to know what that really says about the Android platform. So there's a lot of information here. It's a great reference, but there's maybe some extraneous information that's not totally apparent what the meaning of it is. And so finally, we'll look at this last visualization. This is a very attractive one. Again, shows a lot of information in one place. You can see that from the legend here, the size of the company, of the square that the company name or logo is in, shows the size of the company. The color of the square with the logo in it shows whether the company size is increasing or decreasing. And the arrows show whether the lawsuits, whether they're bold or dashed, show whether the lawsuits are current or resolved. And you can also see that there is information about what the lawsuit is generally about, so whether it's about touchscreens or cameras, for example. Great information, conveys complexity, and it's a great resource, but it's not really clear based on looking at this beyond complexity what the point of including things like company size was. So there's a lot of trend information that could be mined from here, but we're not sure what it is. In any case, after looking at these 8 visualizations, as you can probably tell, there are many creative ways to convey the same information, strengths and weaknesses to each strategy, and that creativity can go a long way to making a powerful visual representation of data.